friends, today I will be sharing with you all of my favorite little bitty baby short books. Hello friends, my name is Lexi and welcome back to my channel. I am so excited that you're here today because today we are talking about a pretty fun thing, I think, and that is short books. I am counting anything below 300 pages to be a short book. However, I will say that the majority of these books are under 200 pages. So, cool. So I had never really thought much about the length of the books that I prefer reading until I saw this video, which I will link down below, from Ariel Bissett, where she talks about how she is intimidated by bigger books. Where's my coffee? Hold that thought. Oh my God, I panicked. Okay. Anywho, in that video, Ariel is talking all about how she is intimidated by bigger books and how she prefers shorter books because they tend to pack a little bit more of a punch. And at first I was like, oh, I can't relate because some of my favorite books are like over 1,000 pages. And then I was like, wait a second, I haven't read a book that long in like over 3 years. But yeah, there's a lot of benefits to shorter books. They're excellent for readathons and for 24-hour readathons, which is a readathon. So yeah, I guess I am kind of a little bit of a fan of some shorter books. Who knew? Ariel knew. So I have compiled a list of my favorite short books. Some of these books are actually my favorite books of like all time, which I think is really interesting. I will be doing this by age category, adult, YA, and middle grade. But yeah, this will be great if you're looking for books for a readathon or if you're looking for maybe some shorter books for a book club. These are my personal recommendations. So here we go. So let's start out with a bang. I am going to share with you my favorite series of all time across all genres, I believe. Ooh, except maybe not Harry Potter. I don't know yet. I haven't thought that. We're not gonna get that deep into it. I don't know. But that is the Wayward Children series by Shauna McGuire. These are incredible. So they include Every Heart a Doorway, Down Among the Sticks and Bones, Beneath the Sugar Sky, and In an Absent Dream. Oh, and Come Tumbling Down, which is upstairs. But anyways, let me go ahead and tell you about, where's the first one? So this book was incredible. The first time I read it, I actually was with my mom at the time and I woke her up and I was like, I need to tell you about this book. And she was like, oh my God, Alexandra, please just leave me alone. And I was like, Mom, please, let me tell you about this book. And she indulged me. I was obsessed with this book then. I'm obsessed with it now. It is just under 200 pages. It's 169 pages. 69. And I think it's phenomenal. So this is a fantasy series and this is really dark actually. It is about children who have gone off and they have found other worlds like Wonderland and Neverland and all these other things. Except when they come back from the other world, they realize that they don't want to leave their world. So it's like if Alice had gone to Wonderland, got out and was like, excuse me, why am I here? Like, I want to be in Wonderland having some tea, which same, Alice. Same. And so to help these kids cope with this very odd predicament of going off to another world, coming back, and then no one believing them, there is a home established for these children. The main professor there knows that all this is real because she has also gone off into another world. And so it's just kind of all about that. It's about this school with all these kids. There's a little bit of a murder mystery in this, and you get to kind of glimpse some of the worlds. And then the rest of the novellas are actually following each of the different students who attended this Wayward school, and we get to see all of their worlds, and it's amazing. It's so incredible. You really cannot go wrong with the series. The next one is a little bit of an odd one, and it's definitely not gonna be for everyone, but I happen to love it, and it's called Einstein's Dreams, and this is by Alan Lightman. So this is just 140 pages. I read this in a single sitting. I thought that this was really, really unique and interesting. It does not follow a traditional plot. So Einstein, we all know, discovered and developed the theory of relativity. So he was really researching a lot about time and what time meant. This book is the imaginings of the dreams of Einstein as he was trying to come up with this theory. So every single night, Einstein dreams about different ways that time works. And so every single chapter is just a dream about time. In some of Einstein's dreams, time is frozen and there are two people who are madly in love who can't quite reach each other and they're just stuck in time. Another one, time has different layers. So if you go towards certain aspects, time is sped up. And if you go towards the outer rims of this world, it's slow and you can live for hundreds and hundreds of years in a second. There are other imaginings of time where everything is backwards and you're actually born old and then you die as a newborn. It's really fascinating and interesting and really weird. Pick this up if you're looking for something a little bit different. It's, again, very strange, but this was a 5-star for me just because I thought it was so cool to think about time and all these different parameters. I really enjoyed it. The next book I want to share with you is actually a play. It is not a novella or a book, and that is Peter and Alice by John Logan. I know plays aren't traditional as far as like picking things up for enjoyment, but I actually found this incredibly easy to immerse myself in. It didn't feel jarring or anything, so I did want to talk about it. This is extremely short. This is not even 100 pages, it's 70 pages long. So I'm not really sure how many people are aware of this, but Alice from Alice in Wonderland was actually based off of a real person whom Lewis Carroll actually saw when he was studying at Oxford. And Peter was a real boy, as well as Michael and John. They were all from this family called the Llewellyn Davies family. One time in history, the woman who inspired Alice in Wonderland and the boy who inspired Peter Pan met and they had a private conversation. This is the reimagining of that conversation and what possibly could have been discussed. This play is incredibly sad. This play is incredibly emotional. It has touches of whimsy in it. We see glimpses of Alice and Peter, like the characters mixed in with their actual lives and conversations. We see how being these fictionalized characters has kind of in a weird way destroyed these two people's lives. It's also shaped them. So it's a sad play, but it's also incredible. And it's actually one of my favorite things in the entire world. And I reread this all the time. Because I'm obsessed with Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan, and I think it's really fascinating. So if you're interested, I highly recommend you pick up this play. I really loved it. Next up, we have probably my favorite adult book of all time. I would say, like, above everything else that I'm gonna show you, this is probably my favorite, and that is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. So this is only 178 pages, and it's so well worth the read. This, again, is not gonna be for everyone. My taste is weird, you guys, so it's important that I just throw that out there. While a lot of people really resonate with this and think that it's Neil Gaiman's best work, I will also say the whole entire thing feels like a dream, a very trippy dream, but in the best way possible. This is kind of like a weird genre blend as well. It starts off as magical realism, and then it's sci-fi, and then it's fantasy. This is about an unnamed narrator who actually goes back to his hometown and house when one of his parents passes away. So he's there for a funeral, and we don't know which parent he is there for. And while he is there, he decides to go to the end of the lane and visit his best friend Lottie's house. They were best friends when they were younger, and he has not been there for a while. He goes back to the edge of this pond where they used to be when they were kids, and the narrator then all of a sudden suddenly slips back into remembering what it was like to be a little boy. It's a coming of age in a very dark way. We see the narrator dealing with some very adult and heartbreaking things, family dynamics, things like that. But then there are these beautiful, intricate touches of fantasy and the fantastical in a very powerful way where you can tell everything is kind of a metaphor for what this narrator is feeling and going through. And it's fantastic, it's perfect, it's flawless. It's a 10 out of 10. Read this and you will fall madly in love with Neil Gaiman. And then the final adult book that I have here is Chocolat by Joanne Harris. This is fantastic. This has touches of whimsy, a little bit of magical realism sprinkled in, but it's very, very, very slight. So if you're not interested in fantasy, I think you're really gonna like this still. This follows a character named Vian and her daughter Anouk, and they move to a very conservative town and they open up a sweet shop. But this town is celebrating Lent, and they have been told that sweets and indulgences are really, really bad and sinful. And there is a priest there who just is out for Vian, and he really does not like all that she stands for. She decides that she's just going to be happy and cheerful and sprinkle a little bit of magic into her chocolate and try to make the townspeople a little bit more happy. So it's really sweet. It's a very wholesome read in my opinion, and I absolutely loved it. So this is actually one of my favorite books of all time as well. I highly, highly recommend it. It is slightly longer than I think any of the other books on this list, but by slightly longer, I mean it's just right at 300 pages. It's 306. I'm trying to keep all of these under 300, but it goes over by 6 pages. It's fine. And that is it for all of my adult books. Let's go ahead and move on to YA. I have so many really, really good YA books that I am thrilled to share with you. Some of these are my all-time favorite, and even the ones that aren't my all-time favorites are so good that I just, oof. They're good. Let's start with the only graphic novel on this list, and that is Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. This is about Charlie and Nick who become friends at this school, and then they slowly start to develop feelings for each other. And it's just a really wholesome and sweet, beautiful friendship and love story, I think. This just brings me so much joy. I really, really highly recommend this to basically everyone. I don't know anyone who doesn't love it. Next up, we have one of my favorite books, and it is so well written, so beautiful. There are lines in here that I feel personally could be poetry. Like Nina LaCour is just at a whole other level, and that is We Are Okay, of course, by Nina LaCour. I love this so much. So We Are Okay is this really, really beautiful story of a girl named Marin who is grieving the loss of her grandfather. So Marin actually moves to New York, and she moves there to kind of get away from her old life. She is going to school there, but you get the sense as the reader that she's running away from something. And this whole story actually just takes place over a weekend where one of her old friends comes to visit her, and they kind of talk about everything that has happened, and Marin tries to repair some of the things in the past. This is also an LGBTQ+ story. Marin and her best friend did have a relationship together. That's not a spoiler. I'm pretty sure that says that on the back. Their story is so beautiful and innocent, but it's not the focus of the story. The focus is definitely Marin and her grief. So this is what I would consider a very sad story. I feel like you'd have to probably be in a really good headspace to read this. When I read this, I cried multiple times. I thought it was just unbelievably beautiful, and I really highly recommend it to everyone. I think everyone should read this. It's so beautiful. Oh, I love it. And this comes in right at 234 pages. Next, we have another favorite book of mine, and this is again one of my favorites of all time, and that is Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno. I am obsessed with this book. I shove it in all my friends' faces. I think everyone should read this because I am completely in love with it. So this book comes in at 256 pages, and I think it is impeccable. This is about a girl named Georgina who lives on a little island, and she is born into a family where they all have magical powers. All the women have magical powers. She is still waiting for hers to show up. Her family runs an inn there, and the inn is kind of famous for housing all of these guests who come to look for this very magical bird who flies to the island once a year. And this is the summer that the bird goes missing. This is Georgina's exploration of a mystery, of trying to piece together a couple of things. It's a very powerful and beautiful story, in my opinion. Georgina also falls in love over this summer with a girl named Prue, but again, just like We Are Okay, that's kind of more of a backseat plot. It's not really prevalent to what's really happening. I think that this is a very sad book. I think it's a very beautiful book. I think it has the perfect amount of touches of whimsy and magic without feeling like the magic is overpowering or the main focus of the story. It's so perfect. I really love this book so much. I think it's just incredible, and I would reread this 10 times out of 10 times, really. Next, we have another book that I am completely obsessed over, and that is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I feel like E. Lockhart does so many incredible things with her writing. The metaphors, the analogies that she uses are ridiculously wonderful. I love the plot. I loved the characters. I loved the island. I loved the story. I loved the writing. I thought everything about this was so good. It's one of my favorite books of all time. So this is about a girl named Cadence who goes to an island that her family owns. Her family is very wealthy, and on the island she gets to kind of hang out with her cousins all summer long. It's about the last summer there when all of the cousins are lying about something. Impeccable writing, in my opinion. I absolutely love E. Lockhart. I think that she is a genius at her writing. I really do. And that is it, you guys, for YA. So let's go ahead and move on to middle grade. So the first couple of books are all by the same author, and that is Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman is very, very good at writing compact stories that pack a lot of punch. And so I have 3 middle grades from him here to share with you. We've got Coraline, which comes in at under 200 pages. I believe it's like 170. Then we have got The Graveyard Book, which 288. So this one's a little bit longer, but still under 300. And then the last one is one that I have not read yet, but it is the shortest, so I did want to include it, and that is Fortunately the Milk. So it's just under 100 pages, but with illustrations as well, so I would assume this would be a very fast read. This is about a dad who goes out to get the milk, and he has gone for a very long time, and when he comes back, he has got an epic tale of where he was trying to get the milk. The next one is The Graveyard Book, and this follows a boy named Nobody Owens who wanders into a graveyard when he is a baby, and he is adopted by ghosts. There is a man who is out for his blood. This man wants him dead, and he has slaughtered his whole family, which I know sounds gruesome, but I do still feel like it is appropriate for middle grade. It's handled really well. I love this. I thought that this was such a beautiful story. There's a lot of metaphors for life in here. I think that it's incredible, and I highly recommend the audiobook as well. And then the final one is Coraline, and this, of course, is a classic. Most people know Coraline. It's about a girl who discovers another world, and her world is identical to the one she lives in, except her parents in the other world have buttons for eyes, and they want Coraline to sew buttons over her eyes. So it's very dark. Neil Gaiman writes a lot of horror, and he does it for children as well, but I think it's an appropriate level of scare. It's very good, and I love all of his books, so I'm constantly talking about all of them on my channel. Next up, we've got The BFG by Roald Dahl. I think this is an incredible story. I know it's older, but I do still think that it can translate. I think any generation will love this. I think it's incredible. I really, really do. It's about an orphan named Sophie who one day opens her eyes during the witching hour and finds a giant staring at her in the orphanage, and he kidnaps her, and they become friends, and it's so funny. It's packed with so much humor and whimsy. So much life is in this book. I think it's incredible. I think there's a reason Roald Dahl is considered a classic in children's literature. He's just a master at so many different tales, and I think this one is my favorite. I just loved it so much. This one's really short too. This one comes in at just 200 pages, so it's perfect for like a readathon. Next up, I have another middle grade classic, and that is Natalie Babbitt's Tuck Everlasting. I think that this is a beautiful, beautiful story. I love it so much. I loved it when I was a kid. I love it as an adult. I love the movie, which is different than the book. So this is 139 pages, perfect for a readathon or something like that. This is about a girl named Winnie, and Winnie discovers a magical brook in the back of her parents' forest. And by the brook is a beautiful boy named Jesse. Jesse is drinking from the brook and tells Winnie that she is not allowed to drink from this brook. and he kidnaps her and takes her to his house. They explain that the brook gives whoever drinks from it immortality. They can't die. And it's just her story with the Tucks. It's this exploration of life and death and what it means to really be alive. It's incredibly wonderful. It's beautiful. I was completely in love with Jessie as a little girl. I was so fascinated with the idea of drinking from a brook and then just gaining immortality. And I think that Natalie Babbitt tackles a lot of really interesting things, like what it means to live and what it means to die, but in this very gentle and beautiful way. It's one of my favorite middle grades of all time, and I definitely think it's worth the read. Well, there you have it, my friends. Those are all of my favorite short books. I hope you enjoyed the list, and I hope you found some maybe inspiration for a readathon or for some books that you want to tackle next if you're looking for something that's not going to be quite as much of a time investment. These are some of my favorites. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an incredible day, and I love you so much. Until next time, you guys, keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book. And I will talk to you very soon. Bye.